welcome to the memorial service of Fern Ellen Hernandez, who was a wife, a mother, an aunt, a sister, a grandparent, and a friend. We gather to remember her today. I'm Julia Berkey. I'm the senior pastor here at Orchard Ridge, so a warm welcome to you today, to those of you in person and to those of you who are able to join in virtually. It's wonderful that we're able to gather in spirit as well, so welcome to you in body and spirit. I invite you to just take a centering breath with me now, to just land in this place. And feel the presence of the sacred envelop you, and call up to your heart a memory of Fern. And let that guide you and carry you through this service. Today we gather to celebrate her life with joy and to release our sadness and grief. And there is no right way to grieve. So however we approach this hour, God is with us. We begin the service by singing a hymn, a song that Fern's husband, Ray, also chose, and much of this service is similar to his because they were like yin and yang, I learned. They were a pair. And so we will sing Precious Lord, Take My Hand, number 472. Let us sing together. Our sacred reading today is from the Hebrew Bible, Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8. And you'll hear familiar words in this passage, words that remind us of the seasons of life, the tides that come and go. So listen now. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. We'll now hear memories from Fern's children, Maria and then Rob.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Ray and Fern, Fern and Ray. You couldn't think of one without the other. Dad was known for many things, his years in the ministry, his work as a public library director. But as they say, behind every great man is a great woman. And in the case of our mother, that was certainly true. She was the rock upon which we built our faith, upon which our family was based, the glue that held us all together, and tonight we honor her. Fern Ellen Mashinsky was born in Merrill, Wisconsin on September 1st, 1929, on her parents' wedding anniversary, and 51 weeks after the birth of her older brother Clifford on September 8th, 1928. Her father, Frank, was born in what was at the time Prussia. Her mother, Martha Ringhant, was born to German-born parents. She was born just over a month before the stock market crash of 1929 and grew up during the Great Depression. Her family had a difficult life. There was not a lot of money and everyone got by on the kindness of their neighbors. They didn't own a car. Her father had suffered a work accident before Mom was born. He was working as a lumber scaler, a person who determines how much wood can be harvested from a tree, when a tree fell on him, leaving his left side paralyzed. She lived life fully. She was a cheerleader in high school and played the French horn. She would downhill ski. She was devoted to the church and participated in many activities. Mom loved her parents. In January 1951, when she was 21, a friend picked her up to go to choir practice. As they were leaving, her father told the friend, "Take care of my Fernie." He died later that night of a fatal heart attack. Mom would later tell me about Christmas that year. Her father was gone, and her brother was in the army, and it was just Mom and her mother. They hugged each other and cried. I could appreciate how they must have felt when 65 years later, Mom and I celebrated Christmas together after Dad was gone and Rob and his family moved to California. Mom and Grandma lived together until Mom met Dad and they got married. She once told me that she wished she had had the chance to live on her own when she was younger. Living without Dad was hard on her. She really missed him. I would call at least 3 times a day and come down and spend weekends with her. She called me her buddy. We enjoyed French onion soup at Applebee's and watching TV together. She would, however, become annoyed when I would recite dialogue while watching Jaws. So we don't actually have to watch this. Mom was loved by everyone, including our friends. When she passed, many of my friends from elementary school to high school reached out and said how sweet and kind she had been to them. She always thought of others before herself. She taught a friend of mine from library school how to darn socks. She would clean and cut carrots for her grand horse, even though I told her he ate grass with dirt, and she felt bad if she was out of carrots. She loved coming out to the barn to see him. She would sometimes put herself down. She would mention that she only graduated from high school and wasn't that smart. She would talk about how she lacked confidence. That couldn't have been further from the truth, especially after Dad passed. She was smart, and she was one of the strongest people I have ever met. Sometimes we don't recognize the qualities we possess in ourselves. She never took anything for granted. She was a wonderful role model and was always my emotional center. She never took anything for granted. Her family did not have a lot, and that was all she knew, so she never missed material things. She would always comfort me when other children were unkind. She helped me through many dark times. I really miss our phone calls. It's hard not having her to talk to. In the later years, she would sometimes tell me she was ready. I can imagine her with Dad and her parents, and I know she is at peace. To close, I want to share one of my fondest memories of Mom, a tradition she and I had. I can't remember exactly when it started. I do remember doing it in elementary school in Wisconsin Rapids. When I would leave for school in the morning, she would stand in the window and wave. I would wave back and continue walking. Every so often, I would turn around and look back, and she would still be in the window waving. We continued this until she was out of my sight. We continued this tradition through the years. When I got my driver's license and would drive myself to school, when I would drive to class during my undergrad. When Mom and Dad moved to the apartment in Madison, they would secure a spot for me in their underground parking garage for when I came to spend the weekend. At the end of the visit, Mom would come down with me to the car. I would pack up and start heading out. She would stand and wave as I left. I would call out, "I love you," and stick my hand out the driver's side window and waved as I left, until I approached the turn out of the garage. I would stop the car, look at her, and as I waved, shouted, "Bye," and drive out until the next visit. So one last time, I wave and say, "Bye, Mom."
Thank you, Maria. That was beautiful. My mom lived a very simple life even after she married my dad. She was there to be there for us. And as I look at today and how we live today, I think Maria and I were probably the two luckiest kids in the world to have a mom who was home every day when we would come home from school. And I can't imagine having grown up without that. My role in this today is to kind of bring a little levity to the occasion. She, first of all, would not want as much attention as we're heaping on her here tonight. And she, as Maria said, would always put others ahead of herself. In addition to being a wonderful mother, she was a wonderful grandmother. And 3 of her 4 grandchildren are here tonight, and the other is watching us over the Zoom or over the YouTube live video. And they all meant the world to her. And we'll talk more about that in a second. I'm usually a guy who brings props when I talk. And I wanted to kind of preface what I had to say by saying I have in my possession the 3 most important things to my mom. Okay? And we start first with a box of Rice Krispies. Every morning began with a big, and I mean big, bowl of Rice Krispies. This is the small box of Rice Krispies in our house because when my mom came to live with us out in California, we would go through 3 big boxes of this in a month, and she could not start without a box of Rice Krispies. The other thing that I brought along, and this is going to complete a coast-to-coast journey here after we all depart, This came out to California with her. We brought it to Arizona, of course, when she moved there with us, and then after tonight, it will go back with Maria to the Grandma Fern Hall of Fame in Charleston, South Carolina. So, and that would be her purse. This is her purse, and I tell you, as anyone who has lived with family and loved ones who suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia, it's hard to find things sometimes. And I bring that up only because this was the only thing that mattered to her in the time that we lived in terms of when we were going somewhere or even day to day. I think all of the key things in her life were stored in this purse at some point or another. I'm sure there were, the keys to the car, the keys to the house. I'm sure we found cards in her purse that many of you here tonight sent to her because this purse was always with her, and therefore you were always with her. And I don't think I can remember a day where we didn't see her with the purse. Even when she was largely, would come and go just in our house, from her bedroom to the living room, to the kitchen. Oh, where's my purse? We'll find it. And so we've got the purse. And then I know for a fact that the third thing that was most important to her were the friendships that she developed with all of you. And as Pastor Berkey and I, developed the service tonight, we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to say a few words, and you can do so from your seat. Those that knew her well, those that remember a funny story, anyone who might have something to share, this is your time now. And if you don't, that's fine too. I've got more to say, and then we'll have, we also have at some point, I believe, a slideshow that we're going to show as well. Some of you are in it. It's some of the highlights. One of the things that when I would come to visit, after I moved to California, my job brings me back here to Wisconsin 3 times a year, and I would stay with her, and we would go out to all the different restaurants. We would try to change it up, Nitty Gritty and the Draft House in Verona, and at every spot I would take a selfie, and a lot of my friends got to know my mom through Facebook. And as my sister and I were telling a couple people beforehand, I don't think she ever turned on a computer or would know how to turn on a computer, but I tell you what, for the last, especially the last 3 years that she's been with us, she was a star on Facebook. But I want to say, anybody here that wants to say anything, this is your opportunity.
I'm Steve Sheets. Ray and Fern invited my wife Marcia and me to travel with them a couple of times. One was to visit Maria, who was in library school, master's program, and doing an internship at, above of all places, Cooperstown. The baseball. So, and then another trip we made to Arizona, that had some baseball involved also, as you might imagine. Well, Ray was definitely the alpha dog. And there was a time when I was along for the driver. That was my role. So I was trying to be subservient. And there were times when Ray didn't like what I was doing. I wasn't going fast enough. I didn't speed up when I came to a yellow traffic signal. And as the trips went on, he got more and more verbal about my not driving to his specifications. And Fern in the back seat would say, "Oh, Ray, stop it." And he did. Do I remember correctly? I think your mother said in their early years of marriage, he was so occupied with the ministry that she did the lawn mowing at the home, and it was a push mower. I can just picture her doing all that work. I have lots of fond memories. Those are the ones that I care to share, but we'll do another one later.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
one other memory as a grandmother that was very special was when she would invite our kids over to the apartment for some grandkid time. And it would always culminate with a trip over to Metcalf's where the kids would help her grocery shop, and then they would be rewarded with one of the great cookies that Metcalf sells in the bakery. And I know the kids that are here today went over to Metcalf's today to see if they could find a cookie, and they weren't there, right? Sold out for the day. So I think it's a reminder of how special it is, the times that you have to spend with your grandma or your mom. Also during this part, before my mom, before her memory started to fade a little bit, when I would come back and I would be working at the kitchen table after covering a golf tournament, she would come over and just start up a conversation. And a couple times I realized how special this time was, so I just kind of set the work aside and brought out my phone, and there were a couple stories that would be I recorded. One is very similar to some of the stories that Maria would tell. One was a really cool story about when she would met some friends down at a little restaurant in Merrill called the Cozy Corner, and all of her friends had a nickel for ice cream, but she didn't have the nickel. And a gentleman in the Cozy Corner realized that she didn't have the nickel for ice cream and paid for her ice cream. And that was one she told many times, so you knew how special that story was. One time I asked the question, when did you first see Dad? And of course, my dad was a minister at the start of his career and at the end of his career. And his senior year, I believe it would have been at the Edens Theological Seminary, he was assigned to be the second pastor at St. Stephen's UCC Church in Merrill. And we have, it's an 11-minute recording. We played it yesterday at her graveside ceremony in Merrill, and I didn't set it up very well there, so I want to set it up here. There's 3 parts to it. One is where she first saw my dad, and the second is when he first asked her out, and the third is a story about when they first went out. So if we could play that, and I'm going to have a seat, I thought it was important to hear her voice one more time. She was a great storyteller, and her stories always had kind of that down-home, real good, feel-good spirit to them, mixed in with a little humor. So see if you can spot the humor in some of this here. When Dad came to town to be the minister, when did you first see him?
I saw him in church I know he came in the fall because it's when their new season started at the university, and so he was through. He only had his senior year left, and so then he the students could sign up if they wanted to do that, go for their senior year to a church and be an assistant, to the minister or whatever. And then, so that's when I saw him, and the first thing that I really remember outside of being in the same in church with him, and because I was always in one choir or another, it was September, and the choir was having its annual potluck for the first choir rehearsal, yeah. And Mary Anderson, Jean Anderson, yeah, their mother was our choir director.
And was she the one who played the organ?
Yes.
And didn't she do that for like years and years and years?
Yes.
I remember that.
Right. Anyway, and so we had this potluck before our first rehearsal, and then he came down to the supper and that, and it turns out he had a beautiful voice. And but what I remember is at one point he was on this side of the table and I was on this side of the table, walking, picking out our foods. That was the first time I ever said hello to him or anything, because he was on Sundays. There wasn't really any much of a chance in that, and so we just said hi, and I welcomed him, and anyway, so he sang in the choir while he was there. He would be up in the front, and then when the choir would sing, he'll kind of quickly get to his place, and so that was and at choir, it was into the fall weather, and that Carol Green would pick me up to go to choir. She had a car, and so we were rehearsing up in front. We had chairs there that we were sitting, but just to get the how it's how he had to perform to be heard and stuff like that. And anyway, and Carol Green and I were always in the front
because you were small.
And this one night we were sitting there, and Ellen Anderson was talking to one of the choir people or something, and Ray came out he must have been in his office anyway, and he went like this to me.
He motioned you over.
Yeah, and so I went. He came in
the side door there.
Yeah.
Because they had that for the pastors to.
Yeah, or it was where the piano was, and then right in back there was, and the choir sometimes could use that door too if they didn't rehearse. I mean, if they didn't go down the aisle.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, and he motioned, and I had met him now before that with because of I was active in the women's groups and in the choir, and it was superintendent of the intermediate department of the Sunday school.
You were?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And in the memorial building there, and he motioned for me to come, because we weren't singing it, and the whole choir wasn't singing at that time. So I went over, and he said, "Are you doing anything after choir?" And I said, "Well, Carol Green and I were planning to go out together, and that, because that's the way it was. We went on to the Pie at the Hotel Merrill.
Pie?
Yeah.
What was that?
That was the bar.
Oh wow.
But it was a gathering place too. I mean,
sure.
Everybody, they'd come and they'd sit in the booths, and you could order the food too if you want, but and so then we would sit in the booth and talk, and and our friends would come in, and we knew everybody in town, and
yeah.
Anyway, And I said, Carol is brought me to
Choir.
choir practice, and we were planning to go out afterwards. And I said, so I think I should
Mhm.
stay with, I should,
Mm-hmm.
and he understood, because
Mhm.
you don't drop your friends
Right.
for some, so so Carol and I went out, and I
Mhm.
had told her that, and about 2 weeks later, the what am I? Barbershop quartets, the group.
Yeah.
They were quartets, and then when they would also have a chorus or
Oh, wow.
whatever. They'd all get together
Yeah.
and sing together once a year at the high school auditorium, and for a concert, and it was really good.
Mhm.
And there were people from, it was all men at that time. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's changing, but anyway, and they come from around the area, so
Mhm.
there would be probably around 50, 60 at least.
Wow.
And so he said, he called me, and he asked if I would like to go to a concert
concert.
and that, and I would, we usually went, my friends, and I would go, but I hadn't made any plans and that, and I said, yes, I said, I would like to go, because I said I usually go to their annual concert, and I enjoy it so much. And so that was our first date.
Wow.
And as we walked into the auditorium by the
Uh-oh.
door, all of a sudden Ray went like this to me, and I looked at him, and he turned his eyes, and and kind of pointed his head a little bit in a direction, and there was one of our best, the two, they're married, a couple, the two best members of St. Stephen's when I was growing up, and now I can't even think of
Who they were?
of
The name?
yeah.
Yeah.
But
what were they looking at you strangely?
Ray kind of went like that, and then I watched. He didn't say anything, and I watched his eyes, and I turned my head, and I saw who it was, and Ray told me afterwards.
The man did one of these to the wife, pointed over there and said, "Look who's a couple." So, and in tiny Merrill, Wisconsin at that time, if there had been TMZ, they would have been the lead story. So, no, it was, and again, like Maria said, I mean, we couldn't have asked for two better parents, and to be able to have that story about how they met and how important the church was, both when he was a minister and then when they returned to Merrill when he was the library director up there. A lot of choir rehearsals, and they loved singing in the choir, and we were exposed to that. We got to go. Brian and Paula Pfeiffer from Wisconsin Rapids are here, and their parents sang in the choir with our parents, and we spent many a time in the game room at First Congregational UCC up in Wisconsin Rapids. So it was great. The other little clip that we have is last September, when my mom had already started living at Legacy House in Avondale, Arizona. We went over with cupcakes to celebrate her 92nd birthday, and we got to talking. Gina's, my wife's parents were with us, and we were just chatting, and I'm sitting there with my phone out again, and I was listening to what she had to say, because let's face it, I think I know I would take 92 in a heartbeat right now, and I wanted to know what it felt like for her to be 92, if she could at this point in her life process that. And so I asked the question, and she answered it, and then I gave her the opportunity to say one final thing that I think is poignant. Do we have that? It was a YouTube video. Not the slideshow, but the, let me see here. I might be able to hold that up to the microphone and. I apologize. I sent Pastor Berkey a lot of stuff, and yeah. I tell you what, should we do the slideshow? And then I'll locate that. Thank you. that was one of my trips back to Wisconsin. She would come down and she would wave goodbye as I took off. And the other one thing I wanted to point out, that the two pictures of her, the one with me and the one of her by herself, high up in above it was actually above Palm Springs. And my mom proudly got both of her. She was born in the Great Depression and died in a pandemic. And she got both of her shots. The first boost, or the first shot she received in the parking lot of the minor league baseball team in Lake Elsinore, California. And then she joined me when I got mine, but I had to go an hour and a half to Palm Springs to get it. And then we drove back through the mountains, and I stopped at the Overlook, and we took those pictures, and she was a great sport. I'll quickly close with, I'll try to play this over the microphone, and this was my mom talking about turning 92.
Well, I tell you, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, because it's really, I'm really proud, and hanging on and having a good time with it, and it is really good.
What message do you have for all your friends?
First of all my friends, I can't believe that I have a family like that, and it's wonderfully, and I am really grateful for all my family. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and I will have another. I should probably bring you to a restaurant here, and then we all go out to one that we all like, and have
A big celebration.
a big celebration, and that would really be wonderful.
And I think as I look around here, I think, if you couldn't hear, she said thank you, thank you, thank you. And as she always wanted to do when she was talking about friends, she wanted to go to a restaurant and have dinner. Jean?
Well, I've been sitting here thinking about when they were members of the church. And so I'd like to just tell a few things about that. Because we had quite a few couples that would get together, and we had a wonderful time. Anyway, when I first met Fern, and she was pregnant, and all of our friends seemed to be, I was not. Because I adopted, so, but anyway, we all had babies at the same time, so we would get together for lunch at each other's houses. That's how our friendship started. But then we would do things with couples. There were probably good 6 couples, Jerry, would you say? I'm talking to Jerry Nelson. He's thinking like he didn't know I was talking to him. Anyway, we would go out together, and we'd go out for fish and so on. Also, one of the things I remember is that when we went up to Moon Beach, we stopped at Merrill and saw your lovely white house that you had there. That was so lovely. But anyway, we would get together with the couples and have a good time. And one time we had one at the water houses, and there was, what do they call those dinners where you say, you order what you want, and maybe it's a peas, and then instead peas means fork, and you get a fork and you can't eat with it. Well, anyway, we'd have such fun, and Ray was the best one at telling jokes. We had one joke that I remember, because I was singing in the choir, and after this, the punchline was would I? And anyway, we'd go to church, and there would be Ray in the back saying, would I, really loud to us. So that, anyway, the other people didn't know what that was about, but we did have just lots of fun with them. In fact, one of the things is Ray loved the Olive Garden, and so we would go there, and there would be the Nelsons, the Andersons, the Waterhouses, I can't even think of all the people, but quite a few couples from church. And we'd go there, and I've got pictures, quite a few of that when we were there, because that's what Ray loved. But then Fern, after Ray died, Bevan, Jerry, Nelson, and I would go to pick up Fern, and we'd go to IHOP for breakfast. That was her favorite place for that. And we had a really nice time, and we got to know each other really well in that time, because with all of us having babies and talking about that, and they were all people from the church, and we got together different times, and we had a wonderful time. So they were really good friends, and I wanted to add that because that was here in Madison at the church, and they were a big part. Oh, and one other thing. Ray sang the Lord's Prayer one Sunday. I don't know if anybody was there. I loved that. And when I was married, I wanted that sung at my wedding, and I couldn't, because I was married in a Catholic church, and for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, they wouldn't do, so I couldn't have it. That's the first time I heard someone sing it, and it was so nice that he did sing that for me. So that's it, I guess. Anyway, we did have a good time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Beautiful sharing that we've had, and we've welcomed in the technological sharing, and I'm sure there's memories bubbling up in our hearts as well. And you can't share about Fern without sharing about Ray, it sounds like. What a pair. Well, this week, as I was contemplating Fern, and I did not know Fern, I did not have the honor of knowing her, but while I was contemplating her, a sense of trust overcame me. Because I knew from speaking to people about Fern that to be in her presence was to be cared for. I've heard stories about, as we all have today, of her steadfast love of you, her family, of her love and excitement that she had for Ray when they met with one another. And from those pictures, you could see how she poured her love into her family. Her eyes were just sparkling. So even though I did not know Fern, I have learned from her about her faith and her compassion, two virtues among many that mark Fern's legacy. Fern deeply loved her family. I've learned from folks around here that she was always pleased and proud to tell about you. She was a stay-at-home mom, as you mentioned, which was not a small thing. And the love I feel for my own daughter, Reverie, is astounding. Being her mother quickly became my most treasured role and challenging work. And so it was for Fern that she treasured being your mother. I know this from the stories that you've told. And she treasured being Beth Marie's mother, even for the short time of her life. And she treasured being your grandmother, these stories that I hear about the cookies and just the way that she had one-on-one time with each of you. She made a point to make you feel special and seen. I learned that Fern was extremely gracious, always welcoming, always interested in other people and what they were doing. She was selfless and humble. She was not self-centered. And church played a central role in her life. From her time in Merrill to marrying a pastor and her time here at Orchard Ridge, she loved church and being in the women's Bible study and the quilting group. Being the wife of a minister is a vocation in and of itself, and Fern wholeheartedly welcomed that. Fern sounds like, to me, the definition of a Christian woman in her generation. part of all these groups at church over 55 as well, the Bible studies. Fern's family even remembers worrying about her when she would call and report that she had spent the night at a homeless shelter. She would take risks with her faith, serving the poor, doing the right thing. She was kind-hearted. And even at the end of her life, and I love this story, even in the scary chaos that can be dementia and Alzheimer's, she was heard praying at home, expressing gratitude to God for her family. When she was at the memory care unit and there was a scene or some chaos there, she would say, "Let us pray," or she would go to the person with prayer. Her faith shined through to the end of her life. It is natural at the end of a life well lived, 92 years old, we begin to need care ourselves. So the love and care that she so graciously poured onto you as family, you got to return to her and care for her. Maria and Rob and Gina, her grandchildren, the way you took her into your home and found the right home for her, the way you sat with her and did puzzles and cared for her and kept her safe, is much how she cared for and tended to you. This is the love and compassion that Fern taught with her life. And her heart must be full, knowing that that love now extends out to others through you. The love that Fern gave to you her whole life, in her elder years, she was able to receive that back from you. The love and the care and the compassion. This is a legacy of love, and I know it will continue to pour out from you. I know just from small encounters with you that it does. This is Fern's legacy. Our scripture passage that we heard earlier about the seasons invites us to turn our perspectives to a wider view, to the natural world and to the seasons of life. And when I look around at this season, this moment that we decided to celebrate Fern and remember her, and when I go to the memory garden here, the meditation garden and the garth, the ferns themselves are just beginning to unfurl, kind of guiding the way on the path. And I thought in their uncurling, greening glory, I imagined Fern's spirit too is unfurling and at peace as she blossoms into God's realm, perhaps taking her place as a guide for you. Wherever God is, I believe that Fern is there too. And I believe that alongside of her because even in the face of the mystery of death, we do not know, but Fern had faith and believed that she would see her loved ones again. And so I offer that same compassion and faith to you, her beloved family, offering the comfort of Fern's own faith that even though death is a mystery, she believed she would see you again. And she is indeed at peace with Jesus and God. That's what faith Fern had and what she believed. So today I believe that with her. Amen.
might even come before his presence. Come before his presence. Oh, that I knew where I might find him. If with all your hearts ye truly seek me, ye shall ever surely find me. Thus saith our God, ye shall ever surely find me. Thus saith our God.
So beautiful, Bruce. Thank you. And so now I invite you into this responsive litany of remembrance, which you'll find in your bulletin, and you'll just read the bold. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember her. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember her. Let us now move our hearts to prayer. O God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of life and sustainer in death, we come to you now with open hearts. We praise you for Fern's life, and at this time we entrust her, our mother, our grandmother, our aunt, our friend, Fern Ellen Hernandez, to your eternal care. Acknowledge a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, a daughter of your divine love. Receive her into the arms of your heavenly peace. We praise you for the way you loved Fern and the way she loved you, and the way she shared your love, O God, with all those around her. We give you thanks for the beauty and simplicity of her faith, that she was kind-hearted. Thank you, God, for receiving Fern into your eternal realm. We give you thanks that she is with you and that fear and confusion are ended and death itself is past. We ask your blessing, O God, on Fern's family as they remember, and we ask that you strengthen them with the loving memories of their years together, for the years ahead in which she lives on in spirit. Thank you for Fern's love of her family and for her faith. Bless her family, and may their memories of her fill them with gratitude. May her example live on in their own relationships and love. May you also be with the untold number of people Fern touched with her kind heart and compassion, those here in this room and those unable to be with us today. Finally, God, may your mysterious love sustain us, so that we may live with faith and compassion as Fern did. Grant us the love of family and care of others that marked her life. Hold us in your tender care and keep us with you, so that we too may rejoice together in our eternal home with you, the Holy Spirit, one God, forever. Amen. So we sing as we close. In the hymnal, it's hymn 435. 33, thank you. In the bulb there is a flower. And so we celebrate the cycle of life as we sing 433. May you go forth blessed by these memories shared tonight, and you are invited to a reception in Friendship Hall after the service. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you, and may God give you peace. Amen.